The NASCAR Xfinity Series likes to promote itself off the tagline, "Names are made here," implying that when you tune into a Saturday race, you'll see the future stars of NASCAR's Cup Series battling for both the checkered flag as well as the series championship. And while Cup drivers are still allowed to drop down and compete in Xfinity, a slew of restrictions have been put in place over the past decade to both limit the number of starts as well as prevent them from challenging for the championship. The current structure of the Xfinity Series has seen the likes of William Byron, Tyler Reddick, Christopher Bell, and Cole Custer evolve into superstars in the series before making the jump up to NASCAR's top level. But it wasn't all that long ago that stock car racing's number 2 series looked very, very different. In the mid-2000s, the then NASCAR Busch Series was essentially a diet version of the Cup Series. When watching a race on Saturday, it wasn't uncommon for 10, sometimes even half the field to be made up of full-time Cup Series drivers. This was such a frequent thing, it was even referred to as bushwhacking. Cup drivers had always been a part of the Busch Series and were consistently winning races, but starting in 2006, they'd take a stranglehold on the series championship. When the Busch Series rolled into the Kentucky Speedway for the 16th race of the season, the Meijer 300, the Cup Series domination was in full swing. Bushwhackers had won all 15 races up to that point and occupied the top 7 spots in the championship standings, led by Kevin Harvick, who had an astonishing 272-point lead just shy of the season's halfway point. In fact, up until then, non-Cup drivers only accounted for 6 top 5 finishes the entire season. Paul Menard was the top series regular points-wise, which I kind of think sums up the quality of the non-Cup drivers at the time. Don't get me wrong, I love the King of No Emotions, but he's never exactly set the world on fire with his on-track performance. Kentucky was a standalone event back in 2006, and this particular weekend, the Cup Series was at Michigan. But that didn't stop 8 drivers from double-dipping. Those drivers being Harvick, Carl Edwards, Greg Biffle, J.J. Yaley, Reed Sorensen, Clint Boyer, Kyle Busch, and Denny Hamlin. A full crowd packed into the Speedway in Sparta, Kentucky, ready for 300 miles of action. With the Busch Series away from the Cup Series for the weekend, Fox rolled out their B booth with Phil Parsons, Hermie Sadler, and Hank Parker Jr. If you struggled to understand thick Southern accents, you were in for a long night. On the pre-race show, they went in-depth to learn about Roush Racing rookie Danny O'Quinn Jr., and if you've completely forgotten about him, that's okay. His stint with Roush would be over by the end of 2007. Anyways, Miss USA Tara Elizabeth Connor gave the command to fire engines, and it was time to get the Meijer 300 underway. 1 week removed from his first career Cup Series victory at Pocono, Denny Hamlin was on the pole in his Rockwell Automation Chevrolet. The top 10 starters featured a few surprises, namely David Gilliland, Regan Smith, and Stephen Wallace. Gilliland was actually a go-or-go-homer, and his Clay Andrews-owned team was not full-time, and therefore had no owner's points to fall back on. They had failed to qualify at both California and Charlotte earlier in the season, and only finished a best of 29th in their other 4 starts. The green flag flew, and immediately outside pole center, Carl Edwards starts dropping like a fly. He couldn't get his car out of second gear as a result of a broken transmission. That wasn't the only excitement of the first lap, though, as points leader Kevin Harvick got high in turn 4 and went for a spin. 2 favorites come into the night suffering setbacks in just the first mile and a half. Harvick only had minor damage to the front valence and was able to continue, but Edwards would take his number 64 Fusion straight to the garage. The green was back out on lap 8, but the racing would have to wait once again as Morgan Shepherd, driving Johnny Davis's Zero car, went for a spin on the front stretch. Harvick narrowly avoided further disaster as he barely managed to avoid Shepherd. J.J. Yaley also ended up with some fender damage after contact with Stephen Wallace and was forced to pit. So less than 10 laps into the race and already 3 Cup Series drivers had problems. If there was ever a chance for a Busch Series regular to break through and win, tonight might be the night. So let's try this again. Restart 2, Electric Boogaloo comes on lap 12, and finally everybody's able to mind their manners long enough to race. Here's a shocker. Kyle Busch was really aggressive early on and had no issue forcing 3 wide. He quickly found his way to Hamlin's back bumper, but aero push, yes, that was a thing back in 2006, prevented him from taking the lead right away. This allowed Reed Sorensen to join the party up front. This was back when Reed Sorensen was thought to be one of NASCAR's next big things. I remember those days. Some things just weren't meant to be. Busch was able to make the second groove work and just got a nose out in front of Hamlin as David Rudiman decided to take the scenic route across the front straightaway to bring out the yellow for the 3rd time. Replay showed that the Biff sent Ruderman for a ride, and now half of the Cup Series drivers in the field had been involved in some sort of incident in just 25 laps. Sorensen decided he didn't want to be excluded from that list apparently, and proceeded to miss his pit box in the first round of stops. Turns out the team was using a new pit sign that night, and Reed just forgot about it, I guess. I tell you, it wasn't easy being a Reed Sorensen fan back then. Busch had stayed out and Edwards rejoined the field as the green came back out on lap 28. Just one lap later, though, one of the nastiest wrecks you'll ever see took place on the backstretch involving Jason Leffler and Jeff Fuller. It was a scary situation for sure, as it took medical personnel quite some time to extract Fuller from his car. The field was placed under the red flag as a collective hush fell over the crowd. He was eventually loaded into the ambulance, and reports from the scene indicated he was awake and moving. Amazingly as it would turn out, he only suffered a broken wrist and finger. As the replay showed for the first time, many were astonished he was even alive at all. Fuller attempted to avoid Leffler by cutting hard to the left, but he lost control in doing so and smashed the inside wall in absolutely the worst possible area. The impact was so severe that despite hitting with the right side of the car, the entire left side imploded. The race would get back underway on lap 38 with Busch leading Menard and Gilliland. Despite their respective damage, Yaley and Harvick were back in the top 10. Yaley was especially fast and found his way into the top 5 a few laps later. The boys in the booth showed some love to David Gilliland as he was holding strong in third, and just a few laps later he'd make his way by Menard for second. Leffler's night went from bad to worse as he couldn't wrangle his already ill-handling car and smacked the outside wall. Pit road was a busy place and all the leaders were in. All eyes turned to the 84 team to see how they would stack up against everybody else. Ironically enough, this was the first time they weren't using a Cup Series pit crew, instead opting to go with a group of their own guys likely to save money. The disparagement in talent was glaring as Gillen lost 13 spots on that stop alone. The top 5 stayed out, and Clint Bowyer brought the field to green on lap 54. The Biff would take the lead just 5 laps later, and it seemed like the woes of Cup Series drivers might have finally passed for the night. Then Reed Sorensen blew a tire and backed it into the fence. Oh, Reed. Biffle got things restarted on lap 69. Wait, Greg Biffle? 69? Yeah, that sounds about right. Finally, for the first time all night, we'd get a lengthy green flag run. Gilliland slowly began picking his way forward after his slow stop. Rain suddenly became a topic of concern up and down pit road as the race neared its halfway point. Biffle and Bowyer had stayed out on the last round of stops and would be forced to pit right around lap 100, but Busch had plenty in the tank and stood on it to get to the front as soon as he could. His 25-lap fresher tires proved worthy, and he was back out front on lap 100. As soon as he lost the lead, Biffle brought it into the pits and Bowyer would follow. Checking in on Gilliland again as he moved by Stephen Wallace into the 6th position, the 84 had plenty of speed, but another round of pit stops was looming, and if he had to come in under green, another slow stop might be catastrophic for his night. Fortunately for him, Bernie Lamar went for a slide to bring out caution number 7. Y'all remember Bernie Lamar, right? Subpar Busch Series driver for Kevin Harvick that married supermodel Nikki Taylor? Interesting dude. Replay showed Lamar checking up off of turn number 2, and pseudo-teammate Bowyer got into the back of him to send him around. Busch would keep the lead on pit road, but would be the second car in line to take the green. This was pre-wave around rule, so Biffle, who was the last car on the lead lap, got to restart at the front of the line. Gilliland had once again lost spots on pit road and was now outside of the top 10. Meanwhile, that caution trapped Clint Bowyer a lap down as he desperately tried to put himself in position for the lucky dog. A piece of debris would bring out the caution on lap 134, which would allow Biffle to stay on the lead lap, but Boris said would get the free pass. Things got very interesting on pit road as third-place runner Yaley opted for gas only and was the first driver off pit lane. But the pit road light was red, which meant nobody was allowed to leave the pits yet. Other drivers stopped and waited for it to turn green, but Yaley went on to the track. It seemed that Yaley was in line for a penalty, but he argued that Hamlin's pit board had obstructed his view of the light and that he shouldn't be penalized for it. Amazingly, NASCAR agreed with him, so Yaley was the leader on the restart with 62 to go. The clean air worked wonders for Yaley, and he quickly legged out a nice lead. Mike Wallace's car came to life, and he made his way past Harvick for second. 3rd through 7th were under a blanket for a number of laps as everybody tried to sort things out as Yaley continued to drive away. During a commercial break, Busch pitted for what seemed to be a tire going down. At that same time, Harvick continued to lose spots as he fought handling. Meanwhile, Gilliland in 5th place was laying down the fastest laps as he closed in on Menard for 4th. As the race got down to its final 25 laps, it seemed that Yaley was destined for his first win if the race stayed green. But Lady Luck was on Cinderella's side that night, as with 17 laps to go, Chris Cook brought out the caution. So here's Gilliland's perfect opportunity, 13 laps to find his way past the 18 car. The lap car of Boyer got the jump and got around Yaley to position himself at the back of the lead lap. This trapped Yaley in dirty air, and when he slid up a lane with 11 to go, Gilliland seized the opportunity. But the challengers weren't over just yet, as Busch spins the 4 car of Augie Vidovich to bring out one final yellow flag. Before going green for the final time, we learn that Gilliland's driver coach is none other than Jerry Nadeau. He mentions that David had been spending a lot of time in the simulator preparing for races. Keep in mind this was in 2006, and racing simulators were still a fairly foreign concept to most teams. 6 laps to go, and Gilliland gets a great restart and is tasked with being perfect for the final 9 miles. Yaley stays right in his tire tracks, but the 84 car doesn't waver a bit, and in only his 7th start driving for a part-time startup team, David Gilliland pulls off one of the most improbable upsets in NASCAR history, and for the first time in 2006, a non-Cup driver went to victory lane in the Busch Series. This was such a huge deal at the time, and it fast-tracked Gilliland to the NASCAR Nextel Cup Series, as just 2 months later, he replaced a departing Elliott Sadler in the number 38 M&M's Ford Fusion for legendary car owner Robert Yates. The Clay Andrews racing team was a different story, though. Gilliland mentioned in his Victory Lane interview that they had plans to go full-time in 2007, but after 2 more starts in 2006, the team would close its doors just 1 month after their stunning victory. While Gilliland never found victory lane at NASCAR's top level, he'd still go on to make over 300 starts. In recent years, he's turned his focus to his son Todd's career, and he even owns his own truck team now, DGR Crossley Racing. And in July of 2019, everything came full circle when Tyler Ankrum gave him his first win as an owner at none other than Kentucky Speedway. And that's the story of the 2006 Meijer 300, a chaotic night of misfortune and carnage, all capped off by an unprecedented upset. Thanks so much for watching episode 2 of Remember This Race. My name is Tyler Head. You can follow me on Twitter at TylerHead18. You can also subscribe to my podcast, Up to Speed, on Apple Podcast. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm looking to grow this channel, and any and all help is appreciated. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you next time.